Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Tuesday evening of Kabbalah with B'nai Baruch here on our YouTube channel as well. So let's move forward from last time. Now, remember, these Tuesday evening Kabbalah sessions are for people who've actually completed all the terms, semesters that we did previously. So if this is your first time watching, or you're new to the channel, then please be advised you should be watching the first semester, second semester, third semester series as well to get a good foundation. Alternatively, you've got a better idea is if you're interested in taking a course, you can go to Kabbalah.info and register with the KABU Academy. So there you can also register and get yourself a course and study with like-minded people. In the interim, though, on Tuesday evenings, we do have this YouTube channel where we touch on some Kabbalistic concepts and how to study wisdom of Kabbalah and what certain concepts are now. And this week, we're going to continue from last week's, which is we're going to go over some excerpts which we've selected for this thing called Passover. But before we get into Passover, there's a few things we need to understand about Passover, or also known as Pesach. Now, everything that the wisdom of Kabbalah talks about is just a description of spiritual states that a person is going through. So, what does that really mean? Well, it means that we don't really know if anybody has ever been into Egypt, or has somebody even crossed the Red Sea. We don't know these things. All of these things, all of the concepts, the stories that are talked about in the 5 books of Moses are actually spiritual states that a person should be going through. And Pesach, which means Passover, passing over, means that a person is going out of his egoism and he's going over to a spiritual state, or so spiritual elevation. So although the books describe it as some kind of a story where people are seemingly living in Egypt and they want to get away from this bad person called Pharaoh, or the king of Egypt, and all these things that are going on between Moses, the Egyptians, the Pharaoh, and the people of Israel, and God, and all this kind of stuff. Although this is all like a nice little Hollywood story in the book, it is actually not a Hollywood story. These are spiritual states that a person is going through once again. So when we're studying excerpts about Passover, you should immediately not relate it and not relate to it like it's some kind of a fairy tale or a story or a Peter Pan kind of book. All right, so this is very important. So this is what we're going to try and touch on this evening. And as we read things, I'm going to try to also explain as best I can what all these things are inside of us and on our spiritual path. You can also watch these lessons that we've been doing for the past, I think, a few weeks on Pesach on KabbalahMedia.info, because every morning, as you know, we've got morning lessons, and the Rav also explains all these concepts. But if you haven't watched the morning lessons, I'll do my best as well as we go over them. So let's start reading. We're going to read from where we left off yesterday, slightly further ahead. Okay. And we're going to read from item number 12. Okay. Sorry, item number 13. All right. And this is from Rabash's article number 71. And it's the meaning of exile. What is exile? It is that he's under the rule of self-love and cannot work for the sake of the Creator. When is self-love considered exile? It is only when he wants to emerge from this control because he suffers from not being able to do anything for the sake of the Creator. So let's read this again. All right, this is what exile means. So it's not a place where we're a slave in some land called Egypt and we're suffering there because of slavery. In the meaning of the sense, But an exile is, what is an exile? It is that he is under the rule of self-love and cannot work for the sake of the Creator. All right, so this is a person who's studying the wisdom of Kabbalah, and he wants to get out of this state called self-love. Right, he wants to get out of self-love. And unfortunately, he's incapable of doing it, he just can't do it. And he understands that he can't do it, and he's really suffering from that situation. It's really ticking him off. And this situation is called exile, that his egoism, his self-love is governing him. When is self-love considered exile? It is only when he wants to emerge from this control because he suffers from not being able to do anything for the sake of the Creator. So exile is when I can't bestow. I'm trying to bestow. I'm trying to get out of my egoism. I'm trying to get out of my self-love, but I just can't do it. And because I can't do it, I'm suffering. All right, so that's the first thing we need to understand. This is what exile means. Okay, so let's read a little bit more. We should know that the number 14, right? I'm just going to move on forward. You guys have a link, I presume, to these excerpts. I'm sure the guys sent you a link for them. We should know that the exile he feels, that he's in exile, is measured not by the exile, but by the sensation of bad and suffering that he suffers because he's in exile. Right, so the situation sometimes needs to be measured, right? Not in fact sometimes, but sometimes when we're in a situation, we can't measure it. When we get out of a situation, because we've gone into a situation and then we get out of a situation, then we can really measure what we went through, right? So until a person is really in exile and then gets out of it, it's hard for him to discern where he really is. But Rabash, because he's been there, is writing to us and he's saying, well, then when he's tormented because he's under the rule of the oppressors and he must do all that they demand of him, and he has no right to do what he wants, but he must serve and carry out all that the nations of the world in his body demand, and he is powerless to betray them. To the extent of the pain he feels and his desire to escape them, to that extent he can enjoy the redemption. So in a state called Egypt, right, in a spiritual state where a person studying the wisdom of Kabbalah, Egypt is when he's really suffering because he feels like there's nothing he can do. The body just controls a person. All our desires, thoughts, everything is just controlling us. And we seemingly just don't have any control. We have no say in anything. And because he can't get out of this situation, he feels trapped. It's like a prison. And this is called the exile of Egypt. So there's a lot of tension there. And also, as he says here, as Rabbi says here, there's a lot of tension and there's a lot of, suffering, irritation, stress, and all kinds of unpleasant situations because you feel like you don't have any say in what's going on. You've got no control over the body. It has a mind of its own. And you begin to discern and understand that your body is really functioning according to what it wants to do and not what you do. So Egypt becomes a place where you actually begin to see yourself from two different perspectives. Inside of you, there's the development of the dot in the heart, and it's striving to bestow, striving to get spiritual, striving to get out of his egoism. And there is this leash on you, which your other half, this thing called the desire to receive for oneself, or sometimes it's known as the Pharaoh. And he's got this leash around your neck and you just can't do it. Yeah. So this is the state that he's talking about. So let's carry on reading. We're on item number 15. So if you've got any questions, shoot. I'll do my best to go through them, to explain. Now then, item number 15. As Baal Islam explained, the exile in Egypt was in order to obtain the vessels of the Egyptians. But it was only to borrow and later to return to them. He interpreted that this matter of the Creator saying to Abraham, your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, was a guarantee of the inheritance. This meant that they would have a need to receive the abundance from the Creator, since wanting to come out of the enslavement of the Egyptians can be only through the help of a holy soul. Then they will need the Creator's help each time, and from this they will have a need to draw high degrees. Now this, in order to understand this little excerpt, we've got to go back to this dialogue between Abraham and God. So Abraham, living much before Egypt, had a little dialogue with the Creator, right? He said, listen, it's all good what you're trying to do, but I just don't see anyone really wanting to bestow. I just don't see my kids wanting to bestow. I mean, who wants to bestow? We want to receive, right? We want to receive, we want to be fulfilled, and so on. So Abraham asked the Creator, listen, what's the deal? Who wants this, right? So the Creator says, relax, I'm going to take care of it. How's the Creator going to take care of it? Well, he's going to send them to Egypt. Egypt means I'm going to send you into the depth of egoism. That's what it means to borrow the desires, the vessels of the Egyptians. So he sends Abraham's children, right, seemingly, his sons, into Egypt. And they spend a bit of time there trying to connect, trying to move forward in their spirituality. And they get so entangled with egoism and their desire to receive that they just end up suffering there, being slaves to their desire to receive. So initially, they didn't really want to bestow. I mean, nobody does. None of us do. It's not in our nature to want to bestow. The Creator is bestowal. We're reception. I mean, put something on the table so we can take it with love too. But to bestow to others is really against our nature. So in order to fix this situation, in order to make sure that we have a desire for spirituality, the Creator takes them down to Egypt, according to the story, right? So in Egypt, they try their best to connect, and they understand that this is a real snake pit. And because they're really suffering from their egoism, because our egoism is the root of all our problems in life as well, actually, right? It's not just a story for a person who's actually studying the wisdom of Kabbalah, but if you think about it, the root of all our problems is egoism. And for a student of the wisdom of Kabbalah, it's even more apparent. It's like, bold, italic, underlined, you know what I mean? So it becomes more evident that our ego is just a destroying force. So as we study more and more, we begin to understand this, that we have this trait in us called egoism, and it really hates us. It really hates us. And when I say it hates us, I'm talking about that this egoism in us, known as the Pharaoh, hates the attribute of bestowal. Pharaoh doesn't want to connect with anyone. The Pharaoh doesn't want to give anything to anyone. The Pharaoh wants to be the king of Egypt. He wants to rule. He wants fulfillment. He wants pleasures. That's it. That's the ruling force inside of us. So we have to have these two discernments inside of us. On the one hand, I want to get spiritual. I want to advance to spirituality because I have a dot in the heart. It's like there's nothing I can do about it, right? And on the other hand, I'm stuck in my human nature, which is the desire to receive pleasure for oneself. So I've got these two contradictory forces in me, and they're really ripping me apart. It's like a piece of paper. It's like you take a piece of paper and tear it up in two, and that's how a person feels. But the good thing about this is, as you feel all these states you're going through, you begin to understand all these things about your nature. So all these inner discernments, all these situations that you're really entering in Egypt, these inner discernments on your spiritual journey, kind of become revelations for you. And then you can really understand what exile is, what Egypt is, what the Pharaoh is, what Moshe is. So Moshe is our dot in the heart, all right? And the Pharaoh is our egoistic nature. And obviously between them, there's a drama, okay? And that's what the whole story is about, right? So hopefully from now on, you will not be thinking of the exile in Egypt, like, in the story, as if it was some historical event, because we don't really know if anybody's even been in Egypt, whoever wrote the story. So let's carry on reading. Item number 16. Diari says that the exile in Egypt was that the view of holiness was in exile. This means that the Klippah of Egypt ruled over the people of Israel. So let's take a look at that, right? So we've got a few technical terms here. Iris says that the exile in Egypt was the view of holiness was in exile. So holiness is bestowal and love. So our state in Egypt, when we're talking about exile, is that we're exiled from this state of bestowal. We're disconnected from the Creator and the Creator's attributes of love and bestowal. That's what it means. And that the Klippah of Egypt, means the evil inclination of the desire to receive. So our egoism ruled over the people of Israel. So egoism was ruling the people, the group of people who were wanting to adhere to this attribute called love and bestowal. Now, as you know, the people of Israel means it's a group of people who are studying the wisdom of Kabbalah in order to correct themselves and attain the attribute of bestowal and love like the Creator. That's what's called the people of Israel, right? So we're not talking about the people of Israel who live in Israel right now, or we're not talking about a group of people who we just called the people of Israel, because there's a reason they have a name, all right? So people of Israel in spiritual terms means that a person who's directed towards the attributes of love and bestowal. So Israel comes from the word Yashar El, straight, El, Yashar is straight, El, Creator. So straight to the Creator, Yashar El, Yisrael. So a person who's directed himself towards the Creator is called Israel. And this could be anybody on the planet, right? It could be anyone. So that person who's studying the wisdom of Kabbalah and wants to attain the attribute of love and bestowal like the Creator feels like that his evil inclination of egoism is controlling him, and he can no way get close to the Creator. So he feels like he's in exile. And that's what exile is. That's what Egypt is. And that's what Israel is. Okay, so very important to get these terms on track. We should interpret that the people of Israel means that the whole nation wanted to work for the sake of the Creator and not for their own sake, as it is known that Israel means Yashar El, straight to the Creator, meaning everything to the Creator. So all the desires in me, that's what it's talking about when it says the people of Israel. So all the desires that I have who want to work for the Creator, who want to come to love and bestowal, are known as Israel. The governance of Pharaoh is the opposite, to work only for one's own sake. For this reason, the view of holiness means that we must work for the sake of the Creator, meaning to bestow. This discernment was in exile under the rule of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, where Mitzrayim, Egypt, was the letters of Mitzrayim, narrow sea. And it is known that narrow means scarce in Hasadim, which is mercy. So basically what it's trying to tell us is we are being ruled by our egoism called Pharaoh, which is self-love. And in order for us to get out of that situation during our spiritual quest to attain the attribute of love and bestowal and to reach a higher level of perception, to elevate ourselves to a higher level of existence, we are going through these things. Now, we have to go through these things. There's no way a person's going to get to spirituality without really going through these states. Why? Because I need to feel what my true state is. And then on top of that, what I need to do is try to push myself to the desired state. So there's the current state. And on top of that, there's a state that I'd like to come to. And when I'm trying to adhere to that state, when I'm trying to go to my goal, go towards my goal, do everything to achieve my goal, I am hindered and stopped by a bunch of obstacles, which are called the Egyptians, the Pharaoh, the evil inclination, the Klippah of Egypt, and so on. So all these things are basically this. We have a dot in the heart that wants to get to a higher level of perception, to a higher level of existence. That higher level of existence means that I exist, I want to exist like the Creator in reality. Creator's existence is in the attribute of love and bestowal. Therefore, we try to attain love and bestowal. And as we study, we begin to discover what is stopping us from getting there. And this whole process is called the exile in Egypt. All right. So it's very important to go over these things in our spiritual path, because we can then begin to understand what is stopping us, what's hindering us. Otherwise, if we didn't go through Egypt, we would not be able to discern what the evil inclination is. So all of these states are very, very important. And every Kabbalah student goes through them. Okay. So let's carry on reading. So I hope you are also getting a better feel for the material now that we can interpret and define these states a bit more clearly and relate them to what we're going through, rather than, it's like a physical story or something. Okay. When one properly sanctifies the point in the heart within him, he begins to enter the exile in Egypt. At that time, he begins to see each time how far he is from the act of bestowal. Then vessels from within him, meaning deficiencies, which the Creator will later be able to fill. Okay, so just like I said a minute ago, how important is it? Because we're trying to grow this dot in the heart, the attribute of love and bestowal. And once we try to do that, that's when we get into Egypt, right? That's when we start working in the state called Egypt. And at that time, he begins to see how far he is from the act of bestowal. So all these things I need to reveal in me. And the vessels form within him. So by revealing all these things, I actually begin to build a desire. I begin to build vessels. These are the vessels which in the previous excerpt we read, they're borrowing from the Egyptians, right? Meaning deficiencies, a need, which the Creator will later be able to fill. So while we're in Egypt, while we're going through all these states, we're actually building for ourselves a desire to get out of egoism, to come to love and bestowal. So now the Creator can then have something to work with, right? Because we're a vessel, a desire to receive. But the Creator wants to fulfill the correct desire. He doesn't want to fulfill our worldly desires, because we get stuck here living like an animal and end up dead. So the Creator wants to raise us to this infinite, to this perfection, this, higher level. And in order for him to do that, we need to want it. So this whole state is called the exile in Egypt, because we want to get there. All right. And this exile in Egypt, like I said, should bring us to a desire that we want to get out of this egoism. Right? This is why sometimes, they talk about Egypt. There are all kinds of plagues and stuff there, which we haven't come to. We'll see how far we go. According to how far we go, we can explain them. But in the meantime, it's really important to understand what the state of being in exile in Egypt means for a person who's studying the wisdom of Kabbalah. Okay. Let's carry on to item 18. Okay, are there any questions? No questions right now. Okay, good. Let's carry on reading. Oops. There we go. Item number 18. The benefit in the exile was the feeling that the will to receive is a sin. And this is the reason to decide that there is no other choice but to try and acquire vessels of bestowal. This is the meaning of the Creator's answer to Abraham, the patriarch, about his request for guarantees for the inheritance of the land. Know for certain that your seed, etc., and they shall afflict them, etc. Through the exile, they would come to discover that the hair's breadth is a sin. And then they would accept the real work in order to detach themselves from the sin. So once again, here, as you can see, the exile in Egypt is very important simply because this is where all the discernment happens. All the discernments inside of us. Everything we can define as bad really happens in this place called Egypt. And this is what really the Creator told Abraham, listen, don't worry, I'm going to give them a hard time. And by the time I'm through with them, they'll want to get out of egoism. Basically, that's what the Creator's answer to Abraham was. And this is actually what we're going through in humanity as well. Look at us right now. What pleasure do we get from life? Really? Except a few minor things that are just fleeting pleasures. Because every time we have a desire for something, even if we get what we want, we still end up feeling empty. And the world is also ever more turning into, I don't know, into more darkness. We've got the COVID-19, we're stuck at home, many businesses are going down. The future doesn't look that great. We don't know if all these, all the vaccinations going to work or not. There's so many doubts. And even if the vaccinations do work with all the mutations that are going on right now, it's really like, we don't know what's going on. So it appears like we're going to be stuck with these, we're going to be stuck with the COVID-19 for a very long time. And it doesn't look like we're going to be able to fix this. Now, even with all the vaccinations, maybe we'll see a slowdown. Maybe we won't see a slowdown. We don't know. Maybe we'll see some, maybe we won't. But what we are witnessing is how life is changing us by really tightening the leash around us. It's really beginning to limit us. It's beginning to restrict all our actions. And, natural disasters are also happening one after the other. We've got volcanoes erupting. We've got floods all over the place around the world. So there are quite a lot of disasters happening, including earthquakes. So all of these things are like really accumulating. And to add to all this, we've got a lot of social unrest. There are a lot of people who protesting now out there on the streets. Everybody's just going crazy. Okay, so we need to understand that life this whole thing we're really in is called Egypt. I mean, we are currently, as the whole of humanity, going through some heavy stuff, which is known as Egypt as well. Because all these states that we're going through as humanity, they're also pushing us, even though humanity doesn't realize it at the moment, but they're really pushing us to develop and to start understanding that we can't carry on living like this. Because the way we're living is just crazy. And people want to, people are talking about going back to normal. I mean, what was normal about our lives? What was normal about our lives? Our lives was pretty crap. Thanks to this COVID-19, we took a break, actually. Really, we took a break. All this running around, this rat race. We were just running around so much, we had no time to even think about our lives. So this COVID-19 did us all a big favor, because now we can actually, for the first time in years, we can actually just slow down, sit down and think about, well, you know, what about this life anyway? I mean, what's there to it? What am I running after? What are all these things that I'm chasing in life? So the COVID-19 experience on humanity is also something like Egypt as well. Very, very close. We can really say as humanity, we're going through such states. Okay. So we've got a few questions, yeah? Okay, so I think we're about 14 people live tonight. So let's see. Erica's asking, do we need to have a spark in the heart in order to want to feel the need to exit out of Egypt? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But what is the dot in the heart? Let's explain that situation first, right? So we don't want to feel like this is some kind of a mystical thing. A dot in the heart is a question inside of us. And that question is, what's the meaning of my life? Why am I living? So a person comes to the wisdom of Kabbalah asking this question, why are we living? What's the meaning of life? What's the point in life, really? I mean, with everything we're going through, what is the purpose? So we were born to build a few buildings, have a family, and end up dead. I mean, like, it just doesn't make sense. So a person who's got a dot in the heart is really questioning the meaning of life. So that person comes to the study of the wisdom of Kabbalah and starts studying and begins to understand that he or she needs to attain a higher level of perception and a higher level of existence, right? That's what we need to attain. Something beyond this corporeal suffering we're going through. It really is a pain in the neck. So once a person starts studying, really taking care of this dot in the heart, he or she enters the exile in Egypt. So this is really important, because what happens in the exile in Egypt is our desire to receive for ourselves. So our egoism is growing on the one hand, but on the other hand, through that growth in egoism, we're beginning to discern more clearly the dot in the heart and what we really want and what we really want to achieve. So because we perceive reality from two opposite ends all the time, this is very important. So I can't have one without the other. All right. P. Green is asking, Moses is related to Sephirot Netzah, which you explained the qualities of Netzah. Could you explain the qualities of Netzah? Well, Netzah is like actually Abraham. Moses is the attribute of Bina, right? Mercy, which is bestowal. And that's what his situation is. And Moses, when we're talking about Netzah, Moses, we're talking about a state where this force can take us. It can actually push us or pull us into spirituality. That's what it is. It's this driving force. This is where our dot in the heart comes from as well. Our dot in the heart is also called Moses. And this is why it's questioning life, right? What does Moses do in Egypt? He says, why am I living this stupid life? What's the point? I'm running around every day. And remember, Moses was a prince in the Pharaoh's kingdom, right? So he was a prince in the palace. So he pretty much had everything. And he's thinking, I got everything, but I've got no pleasure from anything. So he's beginning to question life. And that's how his journey begins as well. And he just can't seem to agree with how he's being forced to live. So this is why he escapes the Pharaoh. He runs away, right? So this dot in the heart is also Moshe. And this is why we need to take care of him, because of him, we can begin to kind of bring an understanding to the things that we're going through. Kevin's asking, how will humanity know what to do if they haven't got a point in the heart? Well, everybody has a point in the heart. It just hasn't awakened yet, but it will awaken. How? Through suffering, all right? And you'll see soon as well. Look, okay, think about how we kind of woke up, right? How did we wake up? All of a sudden, we wake up, there comes a day, and we start thinking, what am I living for? What's the point in life anyway, you know? And when humanity is going through all kinds of dramas, like I just explained, you know, COVID-19, natural disasters, unemployed, bad economy as well, all these kind of things, which we will be also seeing in 2021, you know, people are just going to be changing from within. So suffering is really the key element here that really, you know, awakens a person. It's lack of taste in life. Can't see what's ahead. You don't feel like you've got a future. And just like, you know, people get tired. You'll see that people are not really enthusiastic. They don't want to work anymore. They don't want to run after stuff anymore. These are all signs that humanity is changing, and they feel that this life is no longer feasible. Just can't carry on living like this. And we'll see this in the new generation as well. So the new generation, they won't want to carry on the way we've been doing it. Just like we didn't want to carry on like how our parents were living. Every generation is different. So we're at a tipping point here with the new generation, and this will happen. You will see this will happen. So hopefully it'll happen in a good way, okay? Because if it happens ugly, because every country is now investing so much in arms and their military and their defense, you know, things can go pear-shaped as well. And hopefully it won't go there. But, you know, we as humanity have always been known for our, you know, warring it out rather than talking it out. So people will be awakened. There is no choice for that. Another question by Kevin. Okay, so all what's happening should awaken the dot in the heart. It should awaken some questioning. The dot in the heart is strong in some people. It has a real desire to want to come to the meaning of life. And for some people, it's a bit less, and they just want to have a decent life, you know. So they're asking themselves, why can't I be happy in life? You know, why am I not happy? So it can start with a very small, basic question, like, why am I not happy? What's wrong? What's wrong with the way we're living? So all these questions in humanity is actually a global awakening. But like I said, there'll be some people who will be really striving and wanting to achieve this meaning in life, and they'll study the wisdom of Kabbalah and move forward to elevate themselves. And there'll also be, you know, people who study less, but they will participate, because we have to change. Everybody has to change, really. If we want to be happy in life, if we want to have a good life, we have to understand that we need to change. So this understanding of the need to change will start to awaken in people. and we will actually move much faster forward when that happens, because people will just be hungry for something new. Okay, so let's see what we can do. Let's move forward and read a little bit more. Right, here we go. Let's come to item number 20. When the people of Israel were in exile in Egypt, all right, so that's the group, a group of people studying the wisdom of Kabbalah. They want to attain the attribute of love and bestowal. That's why they're called the people of Israel. And they were in exile, which in Egypt, which is their egoism, and were under the governance of Pharaoh, that's the big ego, king of Mitzrayim, king of Egypt, this narrow sea, and wanted to emerge from his governance. They could not. So they couldn't get out of their egoism. It was still unclear to them what it means to work in order to bestow and not for one's own sake. Although they wanted to work for the sake of the Creator, they saw that they could not. So they wanted to bestow, but they just couldn't. They just can't find a way to bestow. Our nature doesn't allow us to. Yet, they always had excuses as to why they cannot aim in order to bestow. And they did not feel that they were so far from the Creator. So this Egypt is a bit of a time taker. All right. So obviously it's not going to happen overnight, as in the story. Okay. So in the story, they stayed in there for, I think about 240, 260 years, something like that. So they stayed in there for quite a while. So for us as well, for a person who's studying the wisdom of Kabbalah, obviously we're not counting years. So we're not going to be in there for 2.5 centuries, if that's what you're asking or thinking. What it means is that it's going to take a bit of time for a person to study, go through states, to identify what the problem in him or in her is, so that he or she can actually want to, free themselves from this egoistic nature. So this is very important that we need to understand as well. It's all about, when we're talking about Egypt, it's all about the egoistic traits in us surfacing. So at one point in Egypt, he doesn't know what's the problem. Why can't I bestow? But as he moves forward and forward and forward and advances, he begins to understand that these inner traits are embedded in him or her, and we can't get out of them. So somehow we have to change. So wanting to change is the trick here. And that's what Egypt brings a person to. So as a person is developing more and more in Egypt, he is actually becoming this, this is actually becoming like Moses. He's standing up to Pharaoh and he's saying, we're getting out of here. So it actually allows us to strengthen the dot in the heart by showing us the opposite side that we're in. This is why two opposites inside a single receptacle, inside a single individual, is really important, because people out there going through their normal life out there on the street, they don't feel this. A person studying the wisdom of Kabbalah really feels like he or she is in between these two opposite, characters, and it's like you don't know what to do with either of them. You don't know what to do with Pharaoh. You don't know what to do with God, and you're stuck in between. And it's just, it's a stressful situation. And this is why in the story also Moses is going through a lot of dramas. He's thinking, I don't know what to do with both of you. I really don't know what to do with the Pharaoh. Don't know what to do with God. I wish they would both leave me alone. Obviously, they can't leave him alone. Okay, otherwise he'll miss the point. So both of these forces need to work on him. And, Moses going through all the dramas is the dot in the heart growing up. That's what he's going through. Just like we grow up in life as well. As we grow up, we face more and more dramas that are more meaningful. When we're kids, we're just trying to learn how to walk, so we fall down, get up. Or when we're kids, we're not going through so many dramas compared to what grown-ups go through. But as we grow up more and more, these dramas become, a bit more burdening and a bit more traumatic sometimes as well. And this is what happens as well. So the dot in the heart, called Moses, is growing up, and growing up means you're going through problems, because growing up means you need to get experiences under your belt, and according to your experiences, you're going to get wiser. That's the whole situation. Okay. Now then, let's go through item 21. Okay, Erica's got a question. Why are some people's dot in their hearts stronger than others? Well, a lot of things in life depends on the structure of life. Of course, everybody's equal in creation. In creation, there is no part in creation that's higher or better than the other one. But in creation, everybody has a role. Imagine this world without humans, right? Let's just think there were just animals, plants, and the still level. And all of those levels have a bunch of varieties in them, right? So there are a bunch of different animals, plants, and still level as well. And all of them have their own role. And everybody fulfills their role. But I can't say an elephant is more important than an ant, or a lion is more important than a bee. You know what I mean? They all have their place. They all have their role. But some are larger, some are smaller, but they all complete each other. In humanity, now add humanity to this as well. Humanity is the same. And this is why we're all different, right? Everybody has a different face. Even if we're twins, our thoughts and desires are different. They'll vary. We can't be exactly the same. Why? Because everybody has a special place to fulfill. Now, that special place for every individual is the most important thing, not how strong their dot in the heart is, because everybody has a dot in the heart. So a person may not have an amazing urge to really discover the creator and come to a higher level of perception. And so he or she may not have such a desire, but they will still want to ask themselves the question, why can't I be happy? So that is already also asking about the meaning of life. So a person at such state will also go through changes, not as severe as a person who's going through Egypt while studying, the wisdom of Kabbalah. In fact, their state is even better because it's an easier ride. Okay, we're going through a lot of internal drama, and humanity is going through a lot of external drama. But everybody's going through a drama, right? Everybody's going through problems. So everybody has a place in reality which they need to fulfill, and that is due to the root of their soul. Now, why the Creator, did one soul like this and another soul like that, we don't know. And we don't actually need to know, as long as we understand that every part has a place and every part feels perfection when they complete themselves in that specific place that was created for them. For example, my hand does not want to be the brain. Okay, the hand doesn't have a desire to be a brain. The hand has a desire to do things. It says, give me something to do. Okay, and the brain, my brain doesn't want to be like my hands. The brain that wants to think, contemplate, make calculations, so the hand can do them. So the whole body is kind of connected, and everything makes a whole. So I can't say to myself, my hand, although in corporeality we can, because I can live without a hand, but I can't live without a brain. Okay, but at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is that a complete, perfect structure means that everything is there and everything works harmoniously together. Okay, so if we think of the human body as well, we need all the parts there to have a balanced, perfect way of existence, right? So this is same with humanity as well. So because of this completing nature of reality, not everybody has to be, in some state, or in the same state. We can't be in the same state in any case, because we all perceive reality differently as well. Okay? But no person is more or less than another person in spirituality. This is why the whole thing becomes, Kabbalists say the whole thing will become a circle at the end, meaning equal from all sides. Nice question, though. So that's why some people have a great yearning. They come, they study, and they really want to achieve this high level of perception. And some people, they just want to, get out of the problems in life and just have a decent, happy, calm life. All right. But initially, they're both asking the same question: why am I living for? Okie dokie. Hope that helps. So we'll call it a day today, and we'll stop right there. Okay. And we stopped on item number 21, I think. Okay. So we stopped at item number 21. So if you guys can make a note of that. Next week, we'll carry on. Next week, we'll see how we go, all right? If we jump onto another topic, on Sunday, we'll start with that topic. But in the meantime, I hope a few excerpts that we read here made things a little bit more clear for everyone. We really need to relate to everything that's written in the books of Kabbalah, authentic books of Kabbalah at least, these are states that we're really going through. Okay, and they're not some history novel or some Peter Pan story kind of thing, but these are really states that a person is living and going through. All right, it's been a great pleasure being with you all on Tuesday, as usual. So hopefully we'll meet together as well next Tuesday. In the interim, have a great evening or great day, depending where you are. All the best. Bye-bye.